Peace and love, infinite beings, Ajaya Divine here. So let's jump right into how do you operate in the private? How do you protect your family, yourself from more regulation? And as more and more of these codes and policies and statutes are passed for COVID and even for the Black Lives Matter protest and all these things. So how do you protect yourself and your family from this? Okay. So let's first talk about coronavirus. A coronavirus is the common code. That's all a coronavirus is. It's not new. However, COVID appears to be code for a economic virus that is happening in the U.S. corporation, because it's not a government. It is a corporation acting as a government. Because it is being shut down. They're not being allowed to operate in the same manner in which they have been operating, because they have been stealing rights. They enslaved the people and made the people ignorant through controlling education, made them sick through the medical system, taxes, all this stuff is unlawful. All right. So now we get into legal versus lawful. Okay. Legal is under the corporation. It only deals with commerce. You are not commerce. You are a living being. So those codes, statutes, and ordinances do not apply to you unless you agree to it. Okay. So you are a living being. That's a key word. You want to remember that. You are a private living being, indigenous to the land that you were born on. The land that you came out your mama's vagina on, that is where you are indigenous to. All right. And overall, we are indigenous to the world, period. But in dealing with these agents and these corporations, you can claim your indigenous status, or you can proclaim that you are indigenous in the land you were born. So like I'm indigenous to Indiana Republic, because this whole thing is a republic, and that whole Republic versus Democrat, that is a distraction. Okay. We have a republic. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. And to the republic for which it stands, not a democracy. A democracy is mob rule. So a democracy means if 51% of the people say these people have no rights, or we're going to do it this way, that's what goes. A republic protects everyone's rights, regardless of who's in office, regardless of anything. There's certain rights, your inalienable rights, that cannot be touched by anyone. But it is up to each individual to stand on it and to know it and to enforce it. That is what's called sovereign. That is a sovereign, not a sovereign citizen, because a citizen is a slave of a corporation. So you can't be a sovereign and a citizen. You can be a sovereign or you can be a citizen. So that is another setup that was implanted into the conscious community to keep people going in a circle. All right. So when you stand up and you know your rights and you have your own law and things of that nature, you are sovereign. Means that you're an adult. You control your own life, your own reality. That is what that means. Okay. You don't have to depend on any system to tell you what's right, what's wrong, what you can do, when you can do this, all that good stuff. All right. So that was legal versus lawful. Lawful deals with private. Lawful deals with real living beings, because when they created the birth certificate, your mother created the birth certificate, and they used that to enslave you because they told you that you were the birth certificate. And that's not true. That is your corporation that your mother created for you. But you are using yourself as collateral for that corporation. You have agreed to be that corporation. So now they can regulate you as commerce, because you say, yeah, this is me. This is me. This all caps name. This is me. And That ID, yes, this is me. No, that is a corporation that you control. So then you have to proclaim that this is a corporation that I control. This is not me. And you pick your own name, spiritual name, sovereign name, free national name. There's a different names for it. You can call it what you want because guess what? You make the law. Imagine that. Okay, so moving on to, let's see, let me check my notes real quick. All right, so here's proof that you are under that corporate name, that you are still a slave. All right, so slavery ended, right? Ended. And slave owners were compensated for their property. Why? Because the governments didn't end slavery. They took control of the property. That's it. So if I take something from you and then I begin to use it for my own advantage, I have to compensate you. Period. So that's why they were compensated, is because they didn't end slavery. The corporate government, it's not a government, but what everyone has come to see and think of as government, they took control of the slaves. And then guess what? They generalized it to everyone. So anytime you mark a box, black, white, what do they have? Native American, Asian American, African American, Indian, any of the labels that they created in those corporations, and you're identifying as any race within their corporation, that puts you back into slavery. Because if you claim their titles, you have to be governed by their statutes, codes, and ordinances, because that is not law. So we really have to learn our language, and we have to understand what the difference is, okay? So first thing is, you want to stop calling these laws. They're not laws. They're policy. Just like you work, just like if you go to work and you have a job, there are policies in place, right? Same thing with these corporations. They have policies in place that they have programmed you to call law, and they're not law, they're policies. And even like police officers, they're not police officers. Officers are elected. They are policy enforcers. They are here to enforce the policies passed by the corporations. Policy enforcers, not police officers, not officers of the law. The people who would be actually considered officers, that is the sheriff's office. Those are elected positions. So that is who real people, private people, deal with. You deal with the sheriff, not police officers, okay? So, okay, let's go deeper into, take it back. Black Lives Matter. No, they don't. They don't. Black Lives Matter. Black lives don't matter. White lives don't matter. Any box you check, those are corporations. Those are dead, fictitious entities. They're not alive, so their lives can't matter. All right. And the programming is very strong. And, a lot of people are living and reliving in a trauma, and I get it. But the only way to come out of that is to truly understand the foundation of this oppression. All right. And it's all done by your consent. So it's time to release and let go of these systems. Like, let them go. Let Babylon burn, fall, and do what it's going to do. It has nothing to do with you. And there is no fight to be won in this system, because it was never made to protect people. It wasn't made for people. It was made for commerce. It was made for business. Okay? It was made for Hell, I said it, commerce, all right? It's made for commerce. It's not made for, it cannot see, it cannot respect, it cannot do anything with real living beings. You have to agree to be these corporations, and then they can regulate you. Then they can do these things, okay? So, all right, so public versus private. That the commerce, the dead fictitious entity, that's the public side. That is all your corporations. That is the police. That's your court. And those are not judges. Those are magistrates. They don't actually have any power. Besides the power you agree when they say all rise, and you rise because you're dead. And they, bring you back to life for a minute to get you to agree and contract again. And then you go back to being dead. Okay, so, oh yes, y'all, the rabbit hole is deep and the setup is evil genius, and you have to respect it for what it is. And once you know it, it's nothing. It's literally nothing. It's either you participate when you want to participate, how you want to participate. So these courts that, everyone thinks of going to court, they can only recognize dead entities. They cannot even see you as a private person. And as a private person, when you really start to operate in the private, you don't go into court. You don't. Private people send paperwork to precede them. You can basically clear a court, not have to go to court by the paperwork you send in before. And then if you do go into court, you have to know how to not contract with them and not put yourself back in, or not put yourself in their jurisdiction, because you never were. You know what I mean? Like, you never were. Your mom created a corporation for you to control. So you just need to control the corporation. You wouldn't, if you had a hair salon, you don't go in there and say, I am Benita's Bumping Curls. No, you're not Benita Bumping Curls. And you're not the all caps Nearai Bay. Like, that is a corporation that I control, that I hold in trust. That is not me. All right. I am a Jaya Divine. That is my spiritual name. That is my real person name. That is my private name. And that's what I operate. That's how I live. Okay. Because these words, y'all, like operate, that's theirs. Driving, that's theirs. So even your language is very important, because they've been casting spells through the language for so long that we have to watch how we speak. We have to learn these things. And so, a lot of people a lot of conscious people are waking up and they're getting into like the Moors and the things like that. And it doesn't matter what you do, what paperwork you have. If you don't know how to speak and stand, you will put yourself right back into their system. You will contract with your words, because your word is your bond. Okay? So what you say, you will be held. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Used against you. Everything about going to court is against you as a real living person. It will be used against you. It didn't say it will be admissible. Even if you say some good stuff, it can and will be used against you, because it is against you, period. There is no salvation to be found in this shit, y'all. None. You have to learn how to operate, period. Okay, so anytime you see anything in all caps letters, when you were in second grade, first grade, whatever, and they told you how to spell your name, it was capital, lowercase, 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 space, your last name, capital, lowercase, lowercase, lowercase. Well, how come all your mail is in all caps? How come your bank account is in all caps? How come your driver's license is in all caps? That's not spelled correctly. That's not you. That's why. So that is your corporation. That is not a living being. So when someone says, are you John Smith? No, I'm not. I'm not John Smith. I'm a real living person. I'm a private individual with a spiritual name. But I do control John Smith. That is a corporation. I control it. If you have any questions or you have anything, you can mail. You can send mail, because that's another way where private people operate, is by mail, so that there's a paper trail. You send me this, I send you that. So anytime you get mail and you don't respond to the mail, you agree. It's a tacit agreement. You agree. If you don't respond, so even when you get like a collection letter and you're like, shit, I ain't paying that, I don't know what they're talking about, but you don't respond by law, by statute, well, even by law, because that's just law. If you don't respond, then you agree. But you agree. You say, oh yeah, I owe you. And now they send you another one and say, you're in default. Now they take you to court. But again, court can only see corporations. All right. Going too fast? Feel free to email any questions or anything. Ask questions below. All right. So now we're going to get into this term indigenous. All right. Because those are the only people who have rights. Are indigenous people. Okay, so who are the indigenous people? Every living being, real person is indigenous. Wherever you exited your mother's womb and breathe air, you're indigenous there. All right. So, as an indigenous person, you have certain rights. You can look at the inalienable rights or the rights of indigenous people by the United Nations, human rights declarations, to start to understand what some of those rights are and how to stand. Like, you don't have to learn all the code, statutes, and ordinances and blah, 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 blah. Learn the private side. Learn your rights as a private indigenous person. Learn your rights. And that's all you speak on. That's all you talk about. That's all. No. I'm not doing that. I'm not contracting with you. I'm not doing any of that. I am a private person. I am indigenous to this land, and you do not have jurisdiction over me. All right. Now, with that said, most of your corporate officer or your corporate agents don't know law themselves, okay? So they're going to challenge you. They're going to make it seem like, you don't know what you're talking about. They're going to try to scare you because they don't know. They don't know. Literally, they don't know. So you have to know. You have to know for all of them. You have to be firm and sure in your knowledge. And then the least you can say, I do not wish to contract with you, and walk away. I am not John Smith. Nope, that is not me. However, you can send mail if you wish to correspond or contract with John Smith. Send mail to whatever address. And when we talk about addresses, that zip code, that is trademarked. So anytime you use a zip code, you put yourself back into their jurisdiction. Anytime you use those, what's it called? The abbreviations for like Indiana, it's IN, Florida, FL, Georgia, GA. Anytime you use those, you're putting yourself back into corporate jurisdiction because they trademark those, because that's not what it is. It's Indiana Republic. It's the Florida Republic. It's Georgia Republic. It is not the state of, it is not GA. Those are all trademarked. And when you say that you live in those things, you live in the corporation. That means you're an employee. That means you're a slave. Yeah, I know. All right. So how do you operate in the private? Be private. Be private. no one has jurisdiction. You don't have to inform any corporation of anything you're doing. You don't have to have permission to do anything as long as you are dealing with other private people. But if you're dealing with their corporate people and their employees and their slaves, then you put yourself at risk because they're going to be like, hey, you fucking with our property, you doing this, you doing that. And no, we're not allowing that. So it's very important that you start to connect with other people operating in the private, to start to build your network or to build your village, or whatever word that you want to use. But you operate in the private by minding your own business, pretty much. No one else has authority over anything unless you give them permission. Nothing can be done without your consent. The problem is people have been consenting without knowing, which in law makes the contract void because you have to have informed consent. Thanks to corporate government ran schools and education, no one has informed consent because no one learns this information. People really do perish for a lack of ignorance, a lack of knowledge, aka ignorance. Okay, so now while you do not need paperwork to be private, to operate in the private, you can use the paperwork as insurance, okay? So there are a couple of different ways that you can go about this whole putting it on public record is one. So I'm working with a group right now, and 3 main documents that we recommend that people do to separate themselves from their corporation is you're going to do a business declaration that says, your private name and who you actually are as a private person. And then you're going to go and list all your businesses, so that would be your birth certificate name and any name changes. If you have any LLCs, basically that's it. So you're going to list all of those. You could put your children on there, but that birth certificate name, those all caps names, you are declaring that these are your businesses as a private person. And as a private person, you don't have to ask permission to do shit. You don't need any other corporation's permission to operate or to be. You don't need their permission. So you're letting them know all the names that you do business under as a private person. Then your security agreement, which basically takes everything that you could have possibly owned in your corporate name and you transfer it over to your spiritual name. So that's what your security agreement is. You're taking all your property and you're transferring it to your spiritual name. And then there's a UCC where you're placing a lien on your corporation. So before anyone can do business with your corporation, you, the spiritual person, has to be paid. So if they come after you for taxes, if they come after you for going to jail for something, if they come after you for any of these things, before they can do anything, they have to pay your lien because you control that corporation. So if maybe you do your lien for $100 million. You think they're gonna pay that? No, but leave it alone, okay? And first in time is first in line. So so as long if you have a lien on your corporation, then they can't even do business with you without paying the lien. So with those 3, Diva calls them the get out of jail free card, the poor man's copyright. But you basically create a trust and you hold it in trust and you go about your business, man. Like, you go about your business in your life. And but the key, the most important thing is really knowing this and really accepting it into your heart that, like, you have been made a fool, you have been played, you have been misled, you have been enslaved, but you have agreed to it. So all you have to do is not agree anymore. Like, it's that simple. It really is. And your paperwork alone, you could file all the paperwork you want. I mean, you put that on public record at the county. Another thing, the county is who deals with real people, like the county sheriff. They deal with the real people. So your county clerk is someone you want to be doing interactions with, okay? As a private person, that you deal with them. But you can have all the paperwork filed and beautifully and just do all these things. But if you don't know it and you don't live it, then you will find yourself right back in their control. They will get you to contract with them. That's why it's best, I mean, if you don't know what to say, don't say anything. You can say, you know, who you are, your spiritual name, your private name, and that's it. And I'm not contracting with you. So then the next step is knowing how to then file suits and hold them accountable when they violate you as a private person. But honestly, once you really start really understand and live this, there's not gonna be much to do. There's not going to be the threat. It's not a threat. There might be an attempt to scare you, but there's no threat. There is absolutely no threat. And in the case that they do even take your body, you have it in trust, and they need to return your property. I'm not gonna go into that. That's a whole nother something else. But another way to do it is to join a spiritual organization or an organization that operates in the private. And they can be hard to find, honestly, because they're private. And if you don't know, then you're public and they don't really interact. But freedom of religion is definitely a good tool, because that is one thing that every government is founded on a religion. The U.S. government is founded on the Bible. And you will find remedy for a lot of the things they have going on in the Bible. And that's why you'll see them quote it. Hell, weren't they quoting it when they did all the so-called illegal aliens coming over the border? They were quoting the Bible. Why? Because that is how they operate. So you can use religious freedom as another way to operate, and you can define your own religion. You can create your own Bible, call it what you want. You can create your own Bible, and you just put your spiritual organization on public record. Now, people have been running into trouble filing paperwork at the county on public record. And the beautiful thing about that is they have also made social media is a form of public record. And that's why when people post stuff on social media, they can use it against you in a court of law. They can use it against you in a court of law because that is public record. So everything you put on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, I don't know, all of them, TikTok, anything is all, your website is all considered public record. If you go out passing out business cards, flyers, public record. So yeah, and then everybody has a Facebook. Every corporation has a Facebook. So you could put something on public record and tag them in it. So you know that they saw it. You put them directly on public notice. You can also send it registered mail. Registered mail is another very important tool that private people use, because that registered mail number becomes like it really becomes another corporation or another entity, but it's a tracking system, and it goes into into the post office, who is the real federal government, the post office, not the United States Postal Service. That's the corporation, but the post office. That is really what's considered the federal government. And so then it becomes a federal, a federal entity. It becomes a federal law when you send these things. And if they violate it, guess what? That is a federal crime. So when you really start sending these items to people who are over certain corporations, they know. They know. Now, maybe not your everyday police officer out here, maybe not, but if you're sending things to like the Secretary of State, if you're sending things to the governor, if you're sending things to the treasurer, they know. They know these things because that's what they do. Okay? I try to do it. I wanted to just break it down, bust it down for you real quick. And so while I understand the anger and the things with Black Lives Matter movement, if we don't begin to understand the foundation of their oppression and continue to allow race to be used as a tool of division and a distraction to keep people oppressed and to keep people just lost, then you'll just be in hell forever. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You're just gonna be in hell forever, because that's what they want. They want to keep control of you. They want to keep control of your mind, and as long as you keep feeding into their system and thinking that Black people are going to ever find any freedom in this system, you're going to continue feeding it. And as all these COVID regulations and things start to continue to be passed down, they're going to start limiting travel for their employees, for their slaves, for their citizens. You don't have to be a citizen. You don't. That's up to you. So you get to choose. If you want to operate and be private, then be private. If you want to be a citizen and be controlled and be at the mercy of these crooked-ass corporations and so-called governments, then you're free to do that too. But with freedom, remember, comes responsibility. And your responsibility is to know how to contract. Every person is supposed to know the law. Every person's supposed to know the law. That's what an adult is. So anybody y'all, listen, stop calling yourselves minorities. You are not a minor. That means you don't know law. That means you can't contract for yourself. That means you need an overseer. You are not a minority. I had to say that. But I don't know, that was it in a nutshell. I hope, that you were able to receive it. I hope that it helps. I hope you free your mind and free yourself and, start to operate in the private. Infinite beings in America is a private organization. We are a self-supporting spiritual ministry for private people. And listen, it might get a little ugly. It might get a little ugly for those who continue to want to stay in the public, who continue to want to claim these titles that don't belong to you. And there's just gonna be a lot of pain and suffering. I don't want to confirm it, but it's true. Everything is a contract. Everything you say, everything you sign is a contract. My heart gets heavy when I think about all the shit that has already transpired and all the shit coming that's going to transpire. And if you don't truly understand what's going on, what you see is going to drive you crazy. What you see, there's not going to be anything fair about it. There is not going to be anything good about it. But you have a choice. You have the ability to change that. And that is your power. And I hope that you step into it. I am going to put a link to a video where Diva goes over those 3 documents. I mean, like literally reads it with one of her clients and tells you everything that you need to do to file it. And it's a 3-hour video. Yes, it is. Yes, because this is power. This is real serious stuff. And if you don't truly know it and learn it, it doesn't matter. You can file the paperwork, but you need to truly internalize and understand everything that it is and everything that you are in the whole game that has been played against you. Okay, so don't read shit don't sign shit without reading it. Understand that everything is a contract. They already gave y'all the real IDs with the little star at the top, like they did the Jews during the Holocaust time, where you had to have permission to leave and Yeah. Guess what? As an indigenous person, you can self-identify and make your own ID. You can self-govern. These are your rights. So wake up, my people. Peace and love.